I'm not sure if it was a ghost, but around 1995 I encountered what is commonly called a shadow person. At the time, I was living in a double-wide mobile home that my late wife and I had purchased. The home had been set up on what had previously been farmland. The location had never been the site of any home of any kind and is at least 1,000 feet from where any house is or has been to the best of my knowledge. In light of this, you will not think that the home would be a likely location for a haunting. However, my late wife and I did on occasion see several rather strange occurrences there, the most startling of which I will relate here. This encounter took place at night after my wife and I had retired for the evening. Normally, my wife and I would leave a light on all night in a bathroom furthest away from our bedroom because there were usually children in the house. That bathroom was just outside the children's bedroom and would provide them with a nightlight. However, on that night, all the children were staying somewhere else and there was no one in the house except my wife and I. As was usual though, we had left the light on in the bathroom out of habit and it cast a glow through our open bedroom door, weakly lighting the room. Some time had passed after we had laid down and I was unable to sleep. I assumed though that my wife was asleep because her breathing had become regular and reached a point at which it sounded like she was asleep. While lying there unable to sleep, I began to become aware of a presence that I could not explain other than to say I knew we were not alone. I was laying there trying to convince myself that it was only my imagination when suddenly and silently a figure moved to our bedroom door and proceeded parallel to our bed in a smooth gliding motion. Then, rounding the corner of our bed, took a fixed position at the foot of our bed. Strangely, I seemed to be acutely aware that this entity was conscious of us and was intently watching us while I was laying there watching it. The entity can be best described as something that had the appearance of black smoke or a shadow. However, it was more material than either of these, but less material than a real person. The strangest thing about the whole situation was my complete lack of fear. Although I was acutely aware that some being had entered our room and there was no doubt in my mind that it was absolutely not of this earth, at least not as we perceived it, it did not seem to arouse any fear in me. I would say it aroused a feeling that would fit somewhere between creepy and curious, especially considering the fact that I was sure it was aware of me as I was of it. After some time, I had convinced myself that I was imagining it due to my drowsing condition and the dim light. Suddenly, I realized that my wife was no longer breathing like she was asleep. Her breathing had become almost silent. Speaking in a calm voice, I asked, "Honey, are you awake?" To which she replied, "Yes." Then I added, "Do you see anything?" I was expecting her to reply with, "What do you mean?" But instead, much to my surprise, she said, "You mean that thing standing at the foot of the bed?" When she said this, I did finally become somewhat nervous and we both then began to pray. We lay there for about 10 minutes softly saying prayers and then it was gone. But it didn't just disappear. Over a period of about 20 seconds, it became less solid, like smoke clearing, and our perception of its presence became weaker and weaker until it wasn't there anymore. Then it was as if it had never been there. Nothing like this has ever happened since, and the only evidence that it ever did are my memories of it. A couple things left me genuinely shook. Oddly, both were during power outages. The first was during an ice storm that knocked out power for quite a while. We had in general been doing fine. We live in a remote area and we understand that losing power means that we are the absolute last priority for the power company because so few people live out this way. I think it was about the fourth day that I sat down in front of our fire to relax and roast my achy self. I was completely coherent, not tired, sleepy, or exhausted, just sore from repairs a couple days ago. I sat in front of the fire for a minute and was listening to my family talk in the other room about something, and I heard all three of them laugh at the first part of the story. There were only 4 of us in the house. I closed my eyes because the fire was really hot and it was drying my eyes out really bad. Right as I heard my mom start interjecting her side of things, I felt a hand caress my face. Like I felt the warmth and the individual fingers and it slicked back over my hair. This is exactly how my grandma would pet me when I was little. She had died years before this, so I was no longer grieving her at the time. I wasn't even thinking about her at the moment. But this was such a familiar sensation. I jumped up so fast I knocked a chair over and realized my family was still telling the story. I grabbed my flashlight and searched around for a big spider or something. There wasn't anything there, and I know what country spiders skittering feels like. This wasn't that. I searched the whole house and went to my family and asked if anyone had been out in the living room. They said no. I still don't know what touched my face, but I'm still seriously spooked by this. This second story isn't quite so in your face. It was after dark in the middle of another power outage, and I was sitting and talking with my brother in one room with the door closed with just a crappy camper lantern for light. All of a sudden, there is a bright blue light seeping in around the door cracks. We completely freeze and just watch it. Then we realize the power didn't come back on. We always leave the overhead light flicked into the on position during outages, so if it comes back on, we can refill water buckets immediately just in case it goes out again. I whisper to my brother, the light isn't on. He just stares at the door. It just blinks off after about a minute. We jump up and arm ourselves with a baseball bat and scour the house and find nothing. We ran out and looked outside to see what the hell might have caused it, but there was no power anywhere. It's pitch black. None of our neighbors have their lights on either. We go back in and get settled and just kind of ruminate on it. 1. The most logical explanation that we only got power back in a limited capacity doesn't make sense. The hall light is warm yellow and not bright cyan blue. The second most logical explanation is that someone must have somehow shined a light into our windows and had it hit the wall. So we go back out and realize all the blinds at the end of the house are closed. No one could have shined a light through the windows, especially not at big ass searchlight intensity. My brother then notices that even if someone had come up to the windows with a searchlight, which is extremely dangerous on our property, our woods are a death trap. There is no angle in which the light would have been able to get that far into the hallway because at the turn at the end. Plus, the tool closet door was open when we left the room, which would have blocked any light coming down the hall. We obviously were not able to sleep that night or for the next few nights really. I don't know if it was ghost, ball lightning, or whatever, but it was the freakiest thing that ever happened to me because I had no idea what caused it. It never happened again. Back in 2015/16, my mom owned a restaurant. This restaurant used to be a doll factory. Unfortunately, there had been a fire and some odd 13 to 15 people were killed in the process. Fast forward a few decades or so and it had been rebuilt and remodeled. Once it was bought and the new cleanup began, we had a cleaning service come in to make everything look pretty for when guests would start to come in for evening service. And over the course of a week, the 2 women she had hired quit, claiming they had seen ghosts in a mirror upstairs by the bathroom, and another saying all her cleaning supplies kept being thrown around. My sister was on a computer upstairs and claimed she saw the silhouette of a hand pointing over the screen and a long pale face of a man behind her shoulder. My other sister had been touching up her makeup in that same mirror and claimed that while she was doing it, an outline of handprints appeared on either side of her in the mirror, as if a set of hands had just pressed on it. And me, well, I was going through a breakup and hid in a break room behind the kitchen. One of the revolving chairs started rocking/spinning slowly, and a left behind plastic grocery bag that had once contained someone's lunch started dancing in its place, crumbling in on itself. I told whoever was there to leave me alone because I just wanted some place to myself. It was a hard breakup at the time, but they stopped. Odd happenings continued to happen off and on throughout the year. After a year of ownership, we had family circumstances change and we had to move. We had grown fond of the place and their spirits, but we were happy to be going. We had enough paranormal activity from that place to last a lifetime. Once we had cleared out the restaurant and got things packed and cleaned to selling perfection, we looked around and got a couple pictures. Out of curiosity, I stood back and took a flash picture of the dining hall where our VIP customers would sit. I snapped a few more as I went. I sat down to look at them, and there in the pictures, every single one, up close and zoomed in, you could see what was very clearly 3 men. A man with a long beard poking his head out from behind one of the hanging banners. A man in a long garb with eyes almost as big as saucers sitting at the table looking straight at me. And one in the middle of the hall between tables standing idly as if it was just waiting for his picture to be taken. In each picture you could see something, a person, a face somewhere, a hand in the dark. I didn't get to the 4th picture before all of a sudden my phone died. Circle of death and black screen on what had only been a 60-something% battery life, almost brand new phone. Only had it like 6 months at that point. Then as I stood up, something almost tripped me and my phone flew out of my hand and onto the floor and cracked the corner of the screen. I could never get that phone back on or in working condition. It's in a box in my old closet at my mom's place.